For those of you that don't know, my background is I'm also retired from the NYPD. I did 29 years with the NYPD in specialized units, and one of the units that I was in, we really spent a lot of time with these plans. And what we would always call these plans, we would call them tactics. And these tactics, that's the definition of the word tactics, is a plan. You know, you have to have tactics in case of an emergency situation in your household. And one of the things that I'm going to do next year, and part of our seminars, is I'm going to go over those first aid kits. And because during a catastrophe situation, if God forbid, you are locked down in your location for a number of days, and God forbid someone does get injured, you should be able to have the basics to be able to treat some kind of wound. I asked Sergeant Hazelwood to go over. I just this year, the chief, he got these little they're called IFAC, individual first aid kits for all of our officers. And in those kits, I teach them how to utilize perfect timing. In these kits, it's a small little kit that they buy. I think it was like an $80 kit. And in the kit, it has a tourniquet. It has a way, and tourniquets, everyone's heard of tourniquets, correct? From the movies, if you've never used one. There's always a bad stigma about tourniquets, correct? But believe it or not, tourniquets have saved thousands of soldiers in the last, 20 years at war. Before the military was big with tourniquets, we lost hundreds and hundreds of soldiers because if the blood drains from your body, you wind up dying, and giving mouth to mouth or giving CPR doesn't even come into place. So in these kits, there's a tourniquet teaching you how to stop excessive bleeding, bandages, how to pack a wound, things that you don't need to be certified to be able to do, but to keep you and your loved ones from in a time of need, to be able to survive. You might not be able to get an ambulance to your location if we're in a lockdown situation or if there is a catastrophe. Myself and the chief are both 9/11 responders. And I tell you, I say this, I have done a lot of preparing in my life, and I can't tell you, I was not prepared for 9/11, personally, mentally or physically, like with the things that I needed. And I remember, when the towers fell, the chief was actually right on ground zero when the towers actually went down. And I was on a boat going across on my way over. And I just remember going, how long are we going to be here for? Did we bring anything? So preparing yourselves just with little things and being mentally prepared for an emergency situation. That's key. I'm big into mental tactics and mental plans. Thinking things through first. Saying, hey, you know what? I have an elderly grandmother. She lives in the building next door. How can I get her into my apartment so if we are in lockdown, we're all together? Or how would I get her out of the building? One of the things that, Frank and I have a lot of conversations about a lot of different things, and I think Frank's an asset to our community. Many people help out, but he always brings ideas to me. Sometimes he takes it a little convincing, but when I think it through, a lot of the times his ideas are they just make sense. And we just spoke yesterday, and one of the ideas that he had when he was talking about people in the buildings that if we did have to evacuate, how to get them out and who would help out, made me really start to think. And one of the things that he had, his idea, and we're moving forward with it, is we're going to get together with all the building managers, and we're going to try to form a committee with the building managers for emergency situations. We actually scheduled October 6th. RIOC, myself, the chief, and RIOC personnel are going to meet with all the building managers and see if they would like to be on board with an emergency plan situation, or a member of their team would be, and maybe meet quarterly to discuss, we have lists of different people that are handicapped that we need. We already have those lists, but maybe keeping those lists updated on a regular basis, when people move in, when people move out, and who could actually help or assist. Without a doubt, if there is a catastrophe, the chief said it already, the city is going to entrust in the fire department and the police department to help us and save us. And you know, I believe that they'll do a great job, and not just because I was NYPD, but I believe that in those catastrophes such as 9/11, you know, those first responders are heroes, and they're going to do what they have to do to rescue you or make sure that you guys are safe. But if we can get people on board to help out and assist in that within the community, I think that's a big, strong part of community policing. It would be an asset to myself and the chief, to RIOC, to all the building managers. So these are things that we're looking into. We're not going to deaf ear to it. We definitely are going to meet with them and see how many will get on board, and how we can better prepare ourselves and have those plans for, God forbid, something. You know, also, you know, just to recap on what the chief said, you know, and Frank said this to me yesterday, even from FEMA. You know, 90% of the time we're probably gonna, you know, lock down in place and wait it out. You know, if we have to evacuate, I'm positive that they'll get you to where you need to go. But lockdown in place, that, you know, that's a difficult situation too, you know, and how long you're going to be in a location. I live upstate. I don't know if you guys know that. I travel very far every day to come to work. I'm a prepper. You know what a prepper is? I don't like it. I'm not a prepper, but I have enough food for, you know, and water for a week. You know, I live up in the mountains, and I get a lot of snow, and I get a lot of stuck in where I am. And, you know, I have a generator, you know, in case it goes bad, and you know, and there's been a couple of storms where we've been locked down for like, you know, 5 days. You know, and I make sure I'm prepared for that. You know, in the city limits, you know. Would that happen for 5 days? I hope not. I hope that wouldn't be. But where I am, it's very common, you know, and, you know, we want to prepare you guys. We want to make sure that you have enough of what you need, if God forbid, or you know who to ask in your building. That's the other thing. Having a buddy system in your buildings is a key element. You know, people don't talk about that, but who can help me? I am elderly. Who can help me? My mother has MS, and she lives in a complex. And she's only about 2 towns from me, but you know, she has an aide, but the aide has made really good friends with the neighbors across the hall. And if my mother's in need, they know that they can go right across the hall, and they can always count on them to help them out or get them something that they need, something extra. You know, so there's lots of little plans that we have to think about as a community to prepare ourselves for, God forbid, you know, something happens. You know, we hope that it doesn't. But, you know, first aid kits is something that I'm definitely going to push for the next cycle of things, and you know, I'd love to teach that. And my wife's a nurse, and she likes to volunteer her time. I'm going to drag her down with me. And
some of the easy things that they can put in their first aid kit?
Yeah, just bandages, just like. You know, people can make their own first aid kits. Before we actually went to these first aid kits, these are, you know, a tourniquet you have to buy for yourself, you know, and I always say this, go to a medical supply store to buy a tourniquet. Some people go online to get the tourniquet that's cheaper. You know, they sell a lot of phony tourniquets out there because they have this thing called airsoft. Has anybody ever heard of airsoft? They're little, it's actually, they play these games where they dress up like soldiers. Kids do it all the time. And they have these realistic army soldier uniforms, and they have tourniquets on them. Same thing with the soldiers. But a lot of the times they buy the tourniquets from these airsoft companies that they're not really usable tourniquets. They're more for show. They're more for toys or playing around. Adults play airsoft. You know, they play paintball and airsoft too, and they dress up in the full gear and everything. So, you know, a tourniquet is something that you have to buy, but really, what's a tourniquet? A tourniquet is a strap and a stick. You know, and what does a tourniquet do for you? A tourniquet stops bleeding. You know, it stops bleeding, artery bleeding. And the best way I like to explain it is, if you have a leak in your house, has anyone ever had a massive leak in a sink or a pipe in their house? Yes? No? I'm the only unlucky person here? Right? What's the first thing that you do when you have a leak?
Turn off the water.
Turn off the water. That's it, right? You turn off the water. And then I'm not a plumber, so you know what I do? I turn off the water and I call the plumber. Do I turn the water back on before the plumber fixes the leak? No, I never do that. So that's the easiest way for me to describe what a tourniquet is. If you're bleeding to the point where it's heavy bleed, the first thing that, you're not a doctor, the first thing that you have to do is you have to stop the bleeding. And if you create enough pressure around an artery, you can stop that bleeding, turn the water off, until you can get to the plumber, which is who? The hospital, the doctors. So it's crucial that at least you have the capabilities of being able to learn how to shut off that water, stop that bleeding, okay? There's a lot of myths about it where people think that they're gonna lose their arm and their leg if they use a tourniquet. That's so untrue, it's not true. So it's something that I will address when I do that, a first aid class in the future. Other things that you can put in your tourniquets, you know, bandages,
Medicine.
I've lost my mind. Not just ace bandages. And why I say ace bandage, an ace bandage is something real cheap, but does anyone ever taken an ace bandage and wrap it around their arm really tight? And what happens? You stop the blood flow to your hand. So does that create a lot of direct pressure to an area? So a direct pressure, you know, like the chief said, medicine, you know, stuff that you have, an antibiotic that you might have in the house that you have, you know, you might want to put that into that go bag or that first aid kit. Alcohol, ways of cleaning. You know, a lot of times we say sterilized. Should we always get sterilized stuff? You know, listen. At the end of the day, I'd love to have sterilized equipment, but a lot of times, listen. There's hospitals close. They're going to hit you with antibiotics when they get to that. You know, God forbid something does happen to you. Just stop the bleeding, no matter whichever way you can. You see in the Army pictures, guys have taken dirt and put dirt in to stop the bleeding. You know, to try to stuff and pack the wound and create direct pressure. But a first aid kit is essential. I totally believe in it. I carry one in my car. My children have them. My children are old. I'm old. But I make sure that they're in their glove compartments. They have a tourniquet. We had an incident on the island where one of our officers administered a tourniquet to somebody, and you know, it saved their life. So I'm totally into first aid and first aid kits as part of your preparation, amongst the other things. All right. I guess we'll turn it over to Powell.